I think, of this conference, which is holding all of you before the party begins. So we are going to make it, relatively quick and hopefully worth the time that you spend with all of us. And the topic obviously is very interesting, both from a business as well as from an HR perspective, which is that is India really the talent, digital talent powerhouse, for the global economy? And I think if you look, over the last few years, we've had so many global capability centers, or GCCs, as they are called, being set up in India. While that's just one part of the whole digital transformation, but it is indeed a very critical one. Organizations across the globe are increasingly choosing India as the destination for their GCCs. And there are some obvious reasons, right, which all of us have discussed and talked about over the years, right, including the capability that exists in India, all the engineers that we have, data scientists, analytics experts, etc. And this, remember, is not the old world only routine tech talent. And that was also great. But increasingly, we have a lot of deep tech, analytics, data scientists, like I said, also. And along with that, the big business advantage, which is that of cost, right? Which is also very real and very important for all businesses. And we've had this over the years. And all these GCCs actually have moved up the value chain, like I said, from old world routine tasks to actually insights, analytics, and everything that business needs today, right? So not just a back-end function, which is doing something and supplying to what is the front end, right? But pretty much at the front end and doing what is business critical and really center of plate in that sense. And that is the topic of discussion today. And I represent a tech organization which is at the center of transformation. And I think technology today is not just at the center of organizational transformation, but even transformation for countries, right? If you look at India and if you hear some of what is being said about India, actually technology is pretty much at the center of everything that you would like to do from an infrastructure perspective, from a growth perspective, and everything. So that's what we're going to talk about. And very quickly, I'm going to hand over to Amit, right? And Amit actually does run a GCC himself for Volvo in India. So Amit, why don't you go a little deeper into, what are some of the advantages that we see that India brings to the table for this capability?
Sure. So if you really look at it, one positive side for India, especially if you really look at it from a pandemic standpoint, has been the acceleration of the entire digitalization in the workforce as well as in the organizations. And there's this joke which is all across, which says that who's the responsible for digitalization is not the chief digital officer, but is the pandemic, and that's what has really accelerated. That's what has really happened. If you look at some of the data which has happened in the last few years, are teleconsultations, which we never even thought of at one point of time. Today, it's up 220% over the last 1 year. So that's the kind of adoption. We are India's #2 country, across the world in terms of usage of apps or downloading of apps. Our internet usage is one of the highest in the world. Our tele-density is one of the highest in the world. So all that, what is our UPI payments, is 70% increase is happening year on year in terms of using technology to make payment, and which is one of the fastest. Even if you travel to Europe and America, the kind of UPI payment process which we have in India, you'll not really find it as simple and smooth process anywhere else. So that's the kind of a transition which is happening. And when we look at it from an organization standpoint, every organization is now trying to tap into this talent and tap into that kind of availability of talent in India, which is there around, which is digitally savvy and really at the cutting edge of technology and proficiency. If I were to go deep into what we are doing at Volvo, just to kind of give you a context of it, we have the world's second biggest tech center, globally in India, or I would say, out of our headquarters in Sweden, we are the biggest tech center. That's how I would put it. And it's not just about doing things which are from a cost arbitrage perspective. It's more about larger development, which is about e-mobility, which is about vehicle technology, which is about vehicle engineering, which is about powertrains. So all of that is happening over here, and all of that primarily is being driven through India, and that's the kind of a focus which is happening. Our hiring in India is almost 80% of what it was last year in our tech centers, and that's the kind of outlook which is there going ahead. We are setting up a large, a tech lab in terms of for the testing of those products. Now, this is something which was, I would say, 5 years back was unheard of. We couldn't have thought of that kind of a deep domain expertise coming to India and world looking at India from that sense. And that's the power of our people and the advantage which we are offering. Even from an economy standpoint, we are one of those shining examples, in the world who's been able to come out, of COVID in a much, much better way than many of other economies have been able to come up. And that's again thanks to, apart from the larger, macroeconomic environment, it's also about the kind of people we have here. So when I look at it from a broad sense and organizations, India has the right advantage when it comes to digitalization. India has the right advantage in terms of technology. India has the right advantage in terms of outsourcing of certain processes. And again, that's not on the basis of cost. Cost will catch up pretty soon. The way if you really look at the salary surveys which are happening, every time we're saying 35, 10 to 15% cost increases which are happening. Dollar is where it is. So from that standpoint, it's not just about cost arbitrage. It's primarily and predominantly about the technology and the capability which Indians have, or Indian talent has, which is really growing it over here, Bhavya.
Thank you, Amit. And I would, to that list of advantages, I think the only thing I would add is our thriving startup ecosystem, which provides an excellent, partnership system for all of these GCCs as well. Okay, so over to you, Dr. Joshi, and do you want to talk about some of these capabilities that organizations are really looking at when they look at digital talent from India? So would you want to elaborate on that, please?
Sure. So I represent an organization called Hexaware Technologies. I head HR for them globally. We are 29,000 people company. Every year we recruit roughly about 3,500 young talent from different campuses across the country. We also started a similar program in the US. And something very interesting, we probably knew this, but didn't really strike me till a few months back, that I was, one of those executive MBA programs. I was teaching a course. After the course, one wise man walks up after the class and says, I want to share with you something. So what is it? And this is for a very large engineering company based out of Pune. He said, Dr. Joshi, I have realized that while we talk about capability, there are 3 such kinds of capabilities which are very significant. Incidentally, that day we were talking about talent management and processes which enable talent management. He said 3 fundamental capabilities. One, he said flexibility, which is a very, very important element of what does it take to really become successful today. Second, learnability, and we all know this, that while we talk about digital technology today, within the ambit of digital technology, there are so many other technologies that are coming in, complementing, and therefore learnability becomes very critical for young talent. And third, and what he said, I didn't really imagine that would be such a significant factor. He said get along ability. Ability to get along with people who are not like you, different projects, global workforce, all that context makes it very, very important. And if we think about this purely from an Indian context point of view, I believe, and I get opportunities to talk to and meet thousands of these young people from different engineering and management campuses, this is really what they bring in today. When I interview them, when I talk to them, they are very, very hungry to learn new things. They want to make an impact. They're absolutely flexible in terms of which location, what do they want to do, which domain they want to work on. Gone are the days where people were very, very rigid about some of these things. And third is they want to work with people from different backgrounds, different cultures. So I believe that these 3 are very, very essential capabilities that we do have an advantage on when we look at our young talent. Another 4th element that I want to add from my side, which might be worth thinking for all of us, is the stretchability, because it's no longer a routine work for anybody in any kind of organization. So flexibility, learnability, get along ability, and stretchability, these are 4 attributes of the talent that we're looking at in our country today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi and Sanjay. Now I'm going to come over to you. And would you like to talk about? I mean, we already know that we are good at some of these things, right? And from a digital talent perspective, again, I mean, the sheer number of people that we have in the domain is huge, right? But to keep that advantage that we already have, right? How do we ensure that we nurture talent also, in that direction? And what are some of the things that we are doing well and we continue to do also to nurture talent in this direction?
Sure, thank you, Bhavya. It is a humongous task. It's not only about leveraging the opportunities, the talent, capabilities that we have today, but it is also about scaling up exponentially on that. That is the future if we want to be the digital talent backbone of the global economy. So, the Indian education system, that is, of course, major responsibility lies with the government. However, the academia can definitely contribute to that. That is one aspect. However, I think what are the corporates doing about it and what can they do about it is extremely important. Are they building pipelines of talent? There are so many tools which have become highly economical after digitization consequent to the pandemic. So, for example, the assessment centers and development centers, if you go for a virtual one, they are far more economical today than they used to be earlier. So, are they using that, and are the IDP, individual development plans, being used to really help people? Is that being done for the high potential? All of you are HR guys, so you know about this. But I'm just citing a few examples for the high potential, employees. Are you creating leaders out of them through their reports and assessment centers to, over a period of time, with their career paths, to make them successors? So that is the other thing: how to nurture that talent. Are we creating, even for digitization, as you said, whether I will get along with another person who is not like me? For interpersonal relations, are there enough Johari window exercises being conducted? Are there 360-degree exercises being conducted? And the reports are not just lying there, but being used by not only the employee, but his or her reporting manager as well. So these are some of the, and coaching and mentoring. So most of the companies are doing, but there is so much more that can be done about. It's not only about the digital skills, it's about the behavioral skills more, I would say. The other thing I would say, what are the skills like emotional quotient? What are we doing about it? Particularly with the millennials coming in, loneliness would grip them very soon. At the slightest moment, they would get hustled very soon. So this is the common experience. And what are we doing about enhancing the emotional quotient, flexibility? Dr. Vishwanath touched upon some resilience, continuous learning capability, and stretch. What are we as an organization or different organizations, are we really working on, uh, you know, uh, breaking the barriers of employee adoption of digital technology beyond a certain point of time? Are we creating the awareness among employees that digital does not bring a big metamorphosis, but it is a sum total of very small, many business processes, automations, digitization, simplification? Are we really creating that? So that is extremely important. More important is, I would say, the open and transparent culture if we want to be the digital talent backbone of the global economy. And with the times coming in, the new workforce coming in, I would give you an analogy of what a relationship between a father and a son, or rather a father and a daughter, used to be many years back and what it is today. It's quite changed, and it is going to change fundamentally. There is more openness. With the mothers, of course, both sets have been very open, but that is far more open today. It's a two-way exchange. There is more openness and less of fear. So that is how this open. There is certain element of hypocrisy in how we run the organizations also, which will over the years certainly need to change. So that is the other thing. I will narrate a quick story. I was working in a company where CP Gurnani used to work earlier, the present MD of Tech Mahindra. So one day I was there till maybe 10, later than 10:30 in the night. CP happened to, he used to stay close by, he happened to walk into the office one day. And he asked me, Sanjay, what keeps you so late? So I said, there is so much attrition. The telecom operators have got new license. They are now hiring, poaching from us. He thought for a while, and the contrarian thought process that he's always had. This is the thought process and strategic thinking, I think we need to inculcate. He just thought through it and he mentioned, वो tool तो तुम्हारा ही चलाना जानते हैं ना. That is, your software is what they are. Let them go. They'll go there, buy your software, they will use it. What is the problem? So, and in the same vein, if you see today on moonlighting, for example, it is contrary to Wipro and TCS, who have rightly in their own way found it unethical. But CP Gurnani said, okay, turn it into a policy. If it is being declared by the employee, if it is not in conflict, there's no conflict of interest, let us go ahead and make a policy about it. Similarly, I recall Sunil Bharti-Mittal in Airtel once. I went with him to a town hall, employee town hall. To my chagrin, he said, you can write Airtel on your CV and make it look good, get good opportunities. He's very open, very transparent. Being an HR person, I was so conservative, I realized. This would be like sacrilege to me. So this is the openness in culture, change, transparency, gradually in some way we need to bring in. One more point is when Indians are globally becoming the CEOs, not only of the tech companies, but so many examples were given. Lean and Nair is there now. You take the Starbucks example or Ogilvy. If you are really revisiting your own, even the practices which have stood with you, by you in the good stead, if you are revisiting and changing them, definitely there is rejuvenation going to happen, and this is what we need to bring in, that change to the people and their mindset. Last but not the least, I would say, I'm really impressed by the Phoenix. It's a very potent symbol, and the Economic Times has done a great job. Are we providing that Phoenix moment to our employees, which Economic Times is doing to us? So, we are really allowing them to reinvent themselves. Phoenix is the mythical bird, as you know, which rises from this ashes, its own ashes, and takes a new birth. I would say, are we like another Greek mythology, Icarus, another mythical bird which went too close to the sun and got more heat than light, and the wings melted, the wax which are done. So are we also providing them that enablement, the employees, that okay, this can be good and this can be bad, get more heat, light, which means knowledge, and less heat. So with this, I think this is what I really want to say. And Phoenix, otherwise also I must congratulate you. At the capital of Arizona is also the Valley of the Sun. So it's a great symbol. So we should do that for employees to enhance the digital skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. And so yeah, I mean, building technical skills, building behavioral skills, which I think Sanjay spoke about a lot. And then I think very important for all of us as HR people to also create that culture of innovation. Because, as long as we have great, bright minds, they also need that culture that actually allows them to innovate in a way that does not judge them. Because every time you innovate, you're going to fail 9 times and probably the 10th time you're going to succeed. So are we able to really do that, not just from a paper perspective, but actually in practice? I think that's another thing which is very critical to nurture talent like that.
Okay. I want to add one point here.
Please.
Maybe just give one example on this. And this is how we are trying to do it in our organization, just to kind of make a case in the point. So generally, the growth in the organizations has been through hierarchies, and you grow, through taking a broader responsibility. You're an engineer, you become a lead engineer, then you become a project manager. And typically, that's how people has been the traditional growth model, especially in our kind of organization, which are typical brick and mortar kind of organization. One big, and we were struggling with this entire piece around how do we really further build the deep domain technical expertise, and the people were coming back and what is it for me? Why should I build something beyond this? What will I get it? So what we try to do is, we have created a complete belt system here, like right from starting from an orange belt all up till a black belt. When orange belt is somebody who's able to apply that technical knowledge, and the black belt is somebody who's really recognized as the industry leader in that particular technical domain. And that journey also gives the growth, the bands, the compensation increases. So we have de-linked the entire comp increase through the hierarchies and levels, which has been the traditional approach of how people have been growing. But especially in the technical areas, linked it primarily towards the fact that how much domain experience you have, what belt you are in, and accordingly, that will determine what will be your salary band, that will determine what will be your compensation, that will determine what will be your hierarchy, place in the hierarchy, and so on and so forth. So that's one piece which we have done, and it's giving us good results in terms of further building that entire technical domain expertise. And also people are looking forward to it now, not just looking at the traditional paths of organizational structures.
Yeah, great practice, Amit. Thanks for sharing that. And
One
yeah.
comment on that. I think it's not just the. I think it's great that the enhancement has to happen and companies are focusing on it, but also the fact that the macros are with the people, with the employees. It's not just the time. It's not a company's choice anymore where we decide what should be done. It's the candidates, the next generation employees. They basically are demanding it, and they are empowered. If we don't really focus on that, we are not going to survive. So as a company, it's a survival question more than anything else.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think it's absolutely right as, employees or potential candidates are pushing organizations, and the relationship is becoming far more equal
Right.
in today's time. As an organization, you cannot think that you're bigger than the candidate. I think it's a fairly equal relationship where people are able to talk, to each other in that way. So that's great. So, I was going to turn to you any which ways. So it's been a great story, and obviously, somewhere I read that 45% of these GCCs actually exist in India,
Yeah.
of the whole world, right? Which is great. And obviously a lot of advantages which we've already spoken about, but surely there are some challenges that you would want to highlight, right, in this whole journey of looking at India as this powerhouse of digital talent and setting up some of these centers or even otherwise. Do you see that there are still some challenges that we need to constantly work on?
Well, of course, I think we as a country have come a long way. First of all, there's a lot of credit that has to be given to India as a country, the government, the policies that are in play right now. At least, especially in the last 5-7 years, there's a fundamental shift in what Indian government has done, what the India as a playground has to offer for GCCs coming in. Challenges, I think, let me break it down into a couple parts. One are first, like maybe more simpler but very important initial setup kind of areas where it's still somewhat complicated for a GCC to come in and be set up from a legal standpoint or otherwise. Things like geographical location. It's India is diverse. India has all geos have different things to be offered, and even the pandemic, that has changed the dynamics quite a bit as well. If you look at skill set, there's a stark difference between Bangalore or even NCR, within NCR, or Noida versus a Gurgaon location. How do you pick that? What is the right flow, and is it aligned to your organizational GCC goal overall or not when you're coming into India? I think that's very important. I think the second part of the challenge is somewhat more complicated, more longer term, and somewhat more related to HR world as well. I think first I would say the cultural aspect of it. The fact that a local company from abroad is coming into India has a certain culture. They are gonna behave in a certain format. They need to be ready and accept the GCC with open arms and make sure that culturally there's a very good fitment and the GCC doesn't feel alienated, right? Because it's very easy for them to feel a third party versus just being a part of a bigger organization. So that's very important. I think the other part I think is just to make sure the expectations are somewhat real. Be it in terms of number of hirings, be it in terms of the challenges India has. You have to understand the attrition. You have to understand how the hirings work. 4 out of 7 candidates that you offer are going to back out. That's a reality, and it doesn't happen in a US or I wouldn't say it doesn't happen. It does happen, but maybe the scale is a little bit less. So understanding that part and incorporating that in your fundamental structure and policy and expectations is very important. I think the other part which goes along with that is the number of hires, right? A lot of companies come in and they have these beautiful plans of hiring, 5,000 people in the first year or so, or whatever the number is. While, that is a great goal to have, GCCs coming in, they have to understand that you have to still establish your company. You have to make sure that you well articulate what you need from candidates, how you're looking at employees, and what do you have to offer. Because today's young generation, that's what they're demanding, right? It's not just a company coming in and saying, I have a job and would you accept it? It's I have a job, it does so and so, and it will add value in a certain format, and then the employee coming in and saying, yeah, I want to do this for career enhancement. So I think that part is equally important for companies to understand and really sell very well to the company, employees.
Thank you, Sachin and Dr. Joshi. Before this, we were talking about a few challenges again from a talent perspective, and I know you have some perspectives to add on that.
Yes, and though of course right now I work for a services company, but in my consulting career I saw two big GCCs. Of course, they also go to the same market to get their talent, same colleges, etc. So there's no difference there. But I realized, and this was through my interactions with thousands of managers in these two companies, both in financial sector, that the bigger the brand, the bigger the responsibility. Yeah. What do I mean by that, and what did I observe? That while these big brands have the ability to attract talent, their efforts to retain that talent don't necessarily match up. Okay? Because the work is pretty defined. It's really coming from the parent organization. Technology is well defined in terms of what is required and how it needs to be done. And very soon I realized that these extremely highly talented people get bored very, very fast. And then they're actually looking at services companies outside to say, can I get variety there? Can I get to learn new technologies faster and get transition to those new technologies? Can I get better exposure in terms of the variety of clients, variety of domains? Can I also get, quote unquote, the on-site assignment and get a global exposure? So my observation, my study has been that the HR and the business leaders in these centers, which are in a way a powerhouse of talent, have to work really, really hard to make this happen. And somewhere, as my co-panelists also said, the kind of culture that you build, the speed of career enhancement, the learning opportunities that you create, all become even more important to be able to leverage that talent and make an impact. So that's really what I learned from my previous experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with great talent also comes great ambition, and they'll constantly push you to say, what next, what else can I learn, what else can I do and contribute. So thank you, Dr. Joshi, for that. And Sachin, coming back to you, just taking a wider view, right? We've pretty much focused on GCCs and what we've had there. But if we were to just go one level above that, right, and just look at digital and where does India lie there, right? What's your perspective on that?
See, my perspective, first of all, and the question, is out there for the jury, and people ask this question a lot, right? Is India a digital powerhouse or not, right? So, first of all, I think without any doubt, it is the digital powerhouse. The way I look at it, from an Indian perspective is, first you look at the demand side of it. The demand side, you have 1,300 plus GCCs, you have 1,200 plus startups, which is second to only United States, right? Phenomenal growth. The shift that India has seen, I don't think any other country has seen that fast. The fact that the government, from all the way from Prime Minister to the local governments, have been so vocal about digital India and what they want to do with it, and the fact that the adoption of the governments, when it comes to technology, is that the domestic market, the domestic companies, which traditionally probably were not really focused on so much digitization, they have been accelerating digital, growth. So I think the demand is there from a supply perspective. You look at, the talent pool that we have the youngest population, first of all. We are very tech savvy generally. We have a lot of upskilling initiatives going on both in the private sector and the public sector. So the supply is up The demand supply chain, one can argue it's still there. The imbalance is still there, but it's still the narrowest, in the world. We beat ourselves a lot on not being able to supply enough. However, if you compare it to any other country in the world, we are amongst the top. So that is there. And in my experience, back in the days when I was working for General Electric to even now, India has moved from a task doer to innovator right now, right? Back in the days, a foreign company, a foreign team would basically come in and they have a brilliant idea, they will innovate, they'll have a project plan, and they'll basically task it down to you from a resource perspective, and a portion of that will come to India, and India will execute and send it back. From there to here, where innovation, and the best practices that India has are well accepted and being included in global plans. To I think next generation, where these startups, some of these companies that are now coming in, I have no doubts in my mind that they will be the next Googles and the Facebooks of the world. So India will have this next level, play on the global platform. So I think from a bigger perspective, there's a lot of wonderful things that the government and the private sector has done, and I think future is very, very bright.
Thanks Sachin for that, and I'm constantly keeping my eye on the clock because don't want to delay all of you further. So we have about 4 minutes or so. So any questions or any comments that any of you in the audience? Yes, we have. Yes, can we get on?
Yeah,
So first of all, yeah, I agree, the transition of GCCs, right from G, JKs, Genpact, the transactional work, now we're seeing more of a knowledge work that's coming to India. So the growth and the change has been phenomenal. My question is, how long do you think the competitive advantage would remain? Like you're saying in China, the manufacturing companies are considering moving to India, Vietnam, different countries. So how do you think this could play out for India in the long run? See, the cost factor for knowledge work is comparable to now to US, not comparable, but the gap is closing. So,
I think, in my opinion, to respond to you, I think the answer is in your question itself. You're basically saying that what is the advantage? See, first of all, you cannot look at cost arbitrage as the only component, right? Because that is there, but that was a traditional mechanism. Even after the 30-40%, and even sometimes when I hear 100% hikes requested by employees, even after all that stuff, and you look at the inflation that is going on in like Europe or US, I think we're still very competitive from that standpoint. The skill set, the quality of our skill set has improved dramatically, right? Back in the days, I remember having conversations where someone will say, one US employee is equal to 5 or 6 Indian, counterparts. I think that has probably, from a perception perspective, not that I agree, but is probably 1:2, 2.5 at the best, right? I think it's the other way around. In our company, for example, when we came in with the mindset that we're going to use our best practices, which we have done globally, and we're going to implement it in India and do a great job in not only fulfilling our own internal demands but also our customer demands. I think from there, that mindset to the fact that now the wonderful talent that India has is teaching us how to do business, and we are using that best practice. We're taking it back to global markets and we're implementing them over there. So there's a different reason why you will come to India. And probably not, China doesn't have that same, playground to offer, and that same talent and the innovative, hub that India has today.
Just add to what is being said here. So, two broad things which I would see, which are actually defining the growth of GCCs in India. Cost is definitely not there. Let's park it aside. One, availability of talent. That's very critical. We have that talent available, and the talent is best in the class. Second is the ability to innovate better, I would call it do things in a much more cost-effective way or innovate in a much more cost-effective way than it has been generally been done in other geographies. So that's really helping, the bottom line. That's really helping the profitability. That's really helping the innovation, and that's really helping the overall organization. So those are two broad things which are really are there in the Indian talent, and that's primarily is going to drive the growth in the future. Cost definitely not. We'll very soon catch up on the cost piece. So that's never. If anybody is going to come to India for cost, I would say please don't come. But if you're coming to India for the right talent and ability to do things in a better way, in a much more cost-effective way, that's India is the place.
Thank you. I think we beautifully answered. The reason to come, that would change. So that's
Correct.
my takeaway.
Correct, correct.
Okay, I can see that our time is up. So thank you very much. I know, it was very difficult. This was the last session of the day, but I think you've been a very patient audience. So thank you so much for listening in. And before we go, just 30 seconds. And this is on the lighter side. If you remember, I mean, for all of us who've grown up in India, we've had parents obsessed, with saying, what is it that you're going to do after your school? It's either engineering or, medical. And look where that's landed us. We have a huge, hugely qualified engineering population. So in the end, I think as we say in India, parents are always right. So they pushed us in the right direction, and we have this huge, really huge supply of digital talent. And on the more serious side of things, right? And to your question, I think excellent question, and I don't see that advantage going away anytime in the future. For all the reasons that both of them mentioned, and along with that, I think India also brings in a different level of cultural dexterity, our ability to be able to manage and work with diverse cultures across the globe and kind of just blend into that and work through that is also amazing. And I think some of these reasons, the talent, the flexibility, what he spoke about, which is not just cost, but cost effectiveness, or what we call jugaad, and then cultural dexterity, all of these factors, I don't see this advantage going away anytime in the near future. So let's continue to build it together. And thank you so much. You've been a lovely audience, and thank you to all my panelists as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.